Hello, everyone. Welcome to It's Sybil. I am well, always the different child in the family, and
I
that's
love
you.
this group.
That's
I
you.
love
Yeah,
this group.
absolutely. Hello, Quinn. Pulling out the summertime shades. The end of January. How you doing?
I'm feeling good. I didn't want to be excluded from the glasses, so I
Oh,
grabbed what
your time will come, youngin. Trust and
Yeah,
believe.
yeah,
Trust and believe.
yeah.
Stephen Hill, welcome in. How are you?
Feeling great. Glad to be home. Glad to not have to compete with a band doing sound check behind us today. So I'm feel good about this. How you
Yeah.
doing, Sybil?
Well, we have you for the whole show.
How long is the show going to be for?
5-6 hours.
Yes, yes. I'm here for the whole entire time. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. There's no show tonight.
And Myra J, it was great to see you this weekend, not via video, but in person.
I know. We had a chance to grab a little nosh and chit chat. It was so good to see you. Thanks for your support. Sybil came out to see Mary Boyce and Trey Moore, and even J. Anthony Brown got on stage. So for those of you who thought about coming, you missed it.
Right. And I missed that part because I left. But I did get to see you, and I did get to see Myra was hosting, and Mary was doing stand up at the Denton Black Film Festival, and it was
Awesome.
it was and it's really not right to call it a film festival, Myra. It's an arts festival,
Yeah.
really, because they have comedy, they have poetry, they have visual arts, different media, and film. And so it was really it's really quite well rounded. But it was great to see Myra and Mary, and to as we said before, to watch Mary in her transformation into this life as a stand-up comedian. So
Yeah, and it was like all home week. Mr. Joyner came out, Daphne Brown came out, some Reach Media folks came out. Yeah, so it was good.
Wait, Mary's doing stand up?
yes.
Yes.
Just
We did
starting
that.
or always has?
Maybe within the last 2 years, just
Okay,
starting.
just as a quick, if you don't mind. So Tom Jones' show started in 1994, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Mary Boyce is one of the first writers. And so to people who don't know, she was a writer on the Tom Jones show, and that's how we all know her. And I did not know her as a stand-up. So like literally almost 30 years later, she's doing stand-up.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
How great is that?
It really is great.
It's never too late. It's never
It's
too late to do
never
the
too
thing you
late.
want to do.
And
Ever.
she's a really good example
Ever.
of that. She's a really
Yes.
good example.
Yes.
I was talking to Myra
Awesome.
last week that I've seen her do. She's been in an outside venue, like it seems like a backyard.
Mhm.
I've seen her perform at a mall, and
Love
now this a couple at a church. I saw her performance at a church, and now at the Denton Black Film Festival, back to back. And it's really quite great too. And she's got a really good act too.
Mhm.
I love it.
It's smart, it's funny, and it's also very touching. So it's good stuff. It's really great to see her. And I don't know how she felt. Did she talk to you, Myra, about knowing that so many people from her life were in the audience?
Oh, she felt good about it.
She did.
She
Good.
did. Yeah, yeah,
Good.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Good. That's great.
Love
I
that.
got caught by traffic and weather, so I came in and caught Mary's act and caught Myra, and then I heard thunder, and I was like, oh, I got to get out of here again. But because the weather was so bad last
It
weekend,
was.
Myra brought a hella storm to town with her.
That's how I roll, baby. Get
Yeah.
ready
There
when
you
I
go.
come to town.
Yeah,
Brace yourself.
thunderstorm Myra. So, but it was good to see see Myra and Mary, and Anthony Brown joined us for lunch on Saturday, so it was fun. So let us talk about what's going on here. We are going to have an interview with a guest of Kwyn Townsend Riley's. It is Dr. Jen Jackson. She is a Syracuse professor. She has a new book that's been out for about a week. And so we're going to talk with her during the What's Really Going On segment. But before we get to that, let's talk about the What You Need to Know newsletter. This is our Monday through Friday newsletter. It is absolutely free. We'd love to have you join us. It is designed to super serve the African American community, to inform and empower. And if you go to sybilwilkes.com, you can sign up and get your free subscription and give us your name and your email address. We'll have it in your email box every Monday through Friday morning, as well as joining us here Monday through Thursday on It's Sybil. And Kwyn Townsend Riley is our LGBTQ plus contributor, and she is joined by her big brother, Cameron Riley, who is our political contributor, along with Coy Malone, who is social justice, and Aprilette Russell is our mental health and wellness contributor. So on our LGBTQIA plus day, Kwyn, writing about the loss of an LGBT leader in the community, correct?
Yes, so this is actually a 81-year-old civil rights activist who is responsible for finding or creating the DC Coalition of Black Gays. His name was A. Billy S. Jones Henin. He died in his home in Mexico. He was only 81 years old. And this coalition became the National Coalition of Black Gays. And it was the first national advocacy group for Black LGBTQ plus people in the US. The NCBG played a critical role in executing the first ever march on Washington for lesbian and gay rights on October of 1979. This march was previously championed by Harvey Milk, who was assassinated less than a year before the march took place. In this march, in regards to LGBTQ plus history, this march occurred 10 years after the Stonewall riots in New York City. And the Stonewall riots were spearheaded by two trans women. One was a Black trans woman by the name of Marsha P. Johnson, and the other one was a Latinx trans woman by the name of Sylvia Rivera. So if you think about that in terms of chronicle history. But A. Billy grew up in Virginia. He was adopted into a family of civil rights activists, and just learning more about his story and how he was inspired by attending the 1967 March on Washington, he began to ask the question that I feel like a lot of queer youth ask is, where are the people that are fighting for us? And so I'm really glad that he decided to not just swallow that initiative, but exert that initiative into tangible energy to find an organization like the National Coalition of Black Gays, and how it just really rippled effect into lots of various queer organizations that we see existing today. So he did just recently pass. So ashe to our wonderful ancestor that is A. Billy Henin Jones.
And we're going to talk to another leader in that community, and that is Dr. Jen Jackson. She has written a book, and so Kwyn has invited Dr. Jackson to join us, and they have written a book, I should say. And we were just talking about the use of pronouns and adjusting ourselves to how people would like to be addressed or to be referred to. So Dr. Jackson will be on with us in just a few minutes. That is what goes on in our newsletter. Kwyn's brother, as I mentioned, is our political contributor, and he has written about the fact that, there is a statue of the great Jackie Robinson, the first Black man to integrate Major League Baseball, a statue in Wichita, Kansas, and it was stolen, this homage to the legendary baseball player, and it was stolen, and they chopped it off at like its ankles, and they removed it, and they found it. The police found it in an area where it was set on fire. It's not ironic, but today would have been Jackie Robinson's 105th birthday, and just can't believe it, and thinking about how in the 1940s, when he was the first Black man to integrate Major League Baseball, and he was a part of, his statue was a part of an organization within the Wichita community, and which they encouraged young people to overcome the barriers of the financial difficulties and constraints of playing baseball, because it can be an expensive sport with the equipment and travel and uniforms and all that. It's not just getting a basketball and being able to play. There's a lot more to it. And so they have engaged children in the Wichita, Kansas area to be a part of this Jackie Robinson organization. And now they have about 600 members there. And so to have this statue, which stood tall in the Wichita, Kansas community, stolen and then set on fire, it was quite disturbing for a lot of them. It was paid for by the Little League nonprofit League 42. 42 was Jackie Robinson's number. For people who don't know, on Jackie Robinson Day every year in Major League Baseball, all the players, every player on both sides of every team that's playing that day, on every team, what if you're on the Cubs, if you're on the Padres, if you're on the White Sox, if you're on the Mets, if you're on the Yankees, whoever you're playing will also everyone will wear the number 42 on Jackie Robinson Day, and so that is League 42. Invested, the statue was probably worth about $50,000, I believe that they paid, and keeping the spirit of Jackie Robinson alive, especially for the children who participate in their baseball league. So they found it. It was set on fire, as I said, and they are hoping to find the guys. They said that they believe there was two guys who initiated this dastardly act, and so it'll be interesting to see what kind of charges are leveled, and and I know why. That's always the question. Why would you do that? And it's just cause what?
Because you hate black people, and the representation in Wichita, Kansas, probably the biggest representation of black people in Wichita, Kansas, was that statue.
What's the statue?
Like literally, that was a placeholder for all black people
Yeah.
that those hoodlums could get to at that moment. So the answer is, why do that? Because you hate black people.
And that's a sad truth that we're probably looking at. Yeah.
Well,
and
no sensible answer. So throw away the key.
Right.
That's all I got to say. Put them away. Throw away the key. Tell the answer to your mama, because
yeah, when you call her to get you out of jail.
Right.
There's also Black and Missing Day, and take a look at the young man whose name is Darius Apaya. He's been missing from the Fredericksburg, Virginia area for the last week. He went missing January 24th. Young black man, 5'11", and medium brown skin, black hair. And he's a cute kid seen in Spotsylvania County on January 24th. So please take a look at his picture. If he looks familiar to you, go to the Black and Missing Foundation website and contribute your information. And let's continue to bring kids home and to reunite families. And while I'm talking about this, Cameron invited a fascinating woman on the show yesterday, who is in recognition of National Human Trafficking Month. And she was a woman who was trafficked. And now she is helping people who are in that situation that she found herself as a teenager on the south side of Chicago. And was originally scheduled for one segment. And we ended up talking to her for another 30 minutes. She was fascinating. And please, if you did not see it last night, please go and take a look at our YouTube and Facebook page and take a look at this. It was really, it was riveting for me.
It must have been if Yolanda let that happen.
Okay,
let's be honest about it.
Stephen Hill, you'd be proud of me. I made an executive decision, and I said we're just going to throw out the clock, and we're going.
There you go.
But Yolanda said, "Yeah, good call." So that was a lot of fun and very informative, and she is a delight and is doing good things for young people who find themselves in that same situation. And Myra, from the Auburn Grisham neighborhood on the south side of Chicago, which is where I grew up, and she's substantially younger than I am, but that is the kind of situation on the south side that people are dealing with. So please take a look at that. All right.
I've been a lot of reading. I mean, I encourage that. Been a lot of reading. I think people think it's like Taken, like it's a physical,
right?
But it's so emotional and psychological behind what it is. It's not people being chained in caves. It's being mentally chained and manipulation that starts at a very early age. It's sad and prevalent in these United States of ours.
And there's so much that we can do to encourage our young people, to lift them up so that they are not confined and imprisoned by these thoughts and by these people who mean them no good and are only using them to make money and using their bodies and their minds and corrupting them. And in some cases, as this young woman, Lakeisha, she got out and she's helping people. Not everyone is quite that lucky. So take a look at that as we end National Trafficking Month, Human Trafficking Month on today. So, young Kwyn, we're going to move to the What's Really Going On segment. and introduce your guest, Dr. Jen Jackson, Syracuse professor and author of a new book. And I just lost the title of the book, Doctor. I'm sorry. Dr. Jen Jackson, thank you for joining us. And you have a new book that just came out last week.
I do. I do. Here it is right here. It's called Black Women Taught Us. It came out on the 23rd of January, so just last Tuesday.
Awesome. So take a look at that. It's a beautiful cover, by the way. Young Kwyn, would you like to start off with the questionings?
Oh, yes. I also want to read fully Dr. Jackson's bio just to give credit where credit is due, because this is somebody who's really phenomenal, not only in the academia space, but in the movement work space, in the Black feminist space, and just really someone that I'm grateful to really have here on a Wednesday night. So Dr. Jen Jackson, who uses they, them pronouns, is a queer, androgynous Black woman, an abolitionist, a lover of all Black people, and an assistant professor at Syracuse University in the Department of Political Science. They are the author of the book Black Women Taught Us from Penguin Random House and the book Policing Blackness from the University of Chicago Press, 2024. Jackson was a longtime columnist at Teen Vogue, penning articles on Blackness, intersectionality, racism, politics, and culture in the United States. They have been published at Al Jazeera, Washington Post, Marie Claire, Ebony Magazine, The Root, among many others. Academically, Jackson research is in Black politics with a focus on racial threat and trauma, gender and sexuality, Black politics and feminisms, and social movements. Jackson received their doctoral degree in political science at the University of Chicago in 2019, and they are a native of Oakland, California, and will always represent their city.
That's right. That's right.
But you
Thank
did
y'all
come
for having me.
to Chicago. You did come to Chicago. You know, you
I
love
did.
Okay.
I love Chicago, and I love the people of Chicago, and Chicago was critical in my life and politicization. It's all throughout my book and all throughout my social movement story. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Shout out. Even though Oakland's so cool, but Chicago's the best.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Dr. Jackson, can you tell us why you chose to write this book and
I'm sorry, Kwyn. You forgot the most important part.
The title of the book, or what?
No, she's your soror.
Absolutely, I am. I'm a Delta.
I was gonna allow them to introduce. That's
I absolutely am. 13 years in. That's right.
They are also a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority.
That's right. That's right.
CC Delta.
Absolutely.
And we met through BYP 100 for the Chicago chapter.
Almost a decade ago. Yes.
I know it is, like 10 years ago. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But yes, can you tell us why you chose to write Black Women Taught Us, and who is it for?
Yes, I love this question. And again, thank you all for having me tonight. And I also want to uplift the narrative you just shared, Sybil, about your guest from last night. I think that's absolutely wonderful that you all are focusing on human trafficking and the risk it is for young Black women in this country. I myself have been a victim of human trafficking. It's actually very, very common. So in terms of this book, you know, we were talking about this earlier, and I was saying that I think that people see the PhD and they forget that I'm a girl from Oakland, right? They expect that this is going to be some dry history book, and it's just not. I don't actually know how to even write that, you know? I decided to write this book because I wanted to write a book to my mother, and I wanted to write a book to my grandmothers. So I start the book off talking to those very people. My mother is a singer, and my aunts were all in singing groups growing up. They were in something called the Taylor Singers. And everybody in Oakland can sing. I don't know. I think it's a Black people thing. Everybody can really kind of sing. And I grew up in the church, and I was almost born in the choir stand. And so the Black women who originally taught me, who were the first ones who taught me lessons about myself and about how to be a Black person in the world, were these women in my church and in my family, my aunties and my kin, who might not be of any blood relation, but they helped raise me, you know? And so I started the book off talking about a choir rehearsal on Wednesday nights that happened in my house. And I lived in Oakland in the 90s and 2000s, and it wasn't safe. You know, we were in the top 10 most dangerous cities in the country for a reason. And being a young Black girl in this queer body, so I'm 6'4", and I've been 6'4" since I was 12.
Wow.
So I don't remember being under 5 feet tall. I was 5'5" by the time I was 8. So I don't understand being small.
Right.
And so you can't hide in that kind of body. You can't navigate a city that's not safe and never really feel safe because everybody can see you, right? And so these evenings in my home with my aunts singing and my mom and all that were so special to me because I didn't get to really be out in public in those ways because it wasn't okay for young girls to be out like that. So I start the book asking why those types of experiences are not more significant to us, right? Why we don't talk about those experiences with fellowshipping with other Black women, with our kinfolk who are skin folk, right? Who are not of blood relation, but who we adopt, our cousins who, if you look down the family line, there's nothing that connects us besides just loving one another, right? And I had so many of those growing up that I say all the time saved my life over and over and over again. But I also think that, I took them in some ways for granted because we're not really encouraged to treat those relationships as valuable. We're taught that if it's not blood, it doesn't matter. So I really want to write a book. I wanted to write a book that was a love letter to all those connections, not just, the formal ones or the ones we learned about in school. Sure, I write about Angela Davis and Audre Lorde and Bell Hooks and how important their work has been for me. But I also wanted to write about my mother and my grandmother and my auntie Barbara, who taught me how to make sure the chicken was cooked all the way through. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'll never forget those lessons. So the book is really for all the Black women who shaped me and who continue to shape us and to build our communities.
Ooh, that's powerful.
I like that you started from such the innate or almost like inimitable fact of love between like Black femme identified folks. And I was reading your interview in Essence where you humbly admitted that you've never taken a course on Black feminism. I have never taken a course on Black feminism. It's not something that is widely offered. I still haven't really seen it offered as a major at some institutions. Perhaps I could be wrong. So within this,
why is that? I'm curious for the two of you.
We can talk about it. Do you want to talk about it?
I was gonna say, like, do you want to answer that question as to why
it's
not offered, and do you feel like the book that introduces folks to Black feminism?
Absolutely. So this is another reason why I wrote this book. When I got to college, I left Oakland. I had a very difficult adolescence. My teen years were awful. I was intermittently houseless. I told you all I myself was a victim of sex trafficking. So before I got to college, I was a mess, right? I was like, whatever happens, happens, and I was like really lost. And I got to the University of Southern California, USC, and there's all these white people. And I had never seen this many white people.
You come from Oakland.
I'm from Oakland.
Yeah.
And I'm from East Oakland. I'm not from the hills, right? So, it's very similar to Chicago, very segregated. So y'all know the North Side got white people, right? The South Side don't. That's how Oakland is, right? And so I was used to being around people who looked like me. On the South Side of Oakland, you got Black and brown people, you got Filipino people, and you got ethnics. And so I got to USC and I saw all these, very white people, like really white people. And, they were super racist. And I didn't even really understand what racism really was. I mean, I had heard about it. I had seen it on the movies. And so I was kind of like a fish out of water in a lot of respects because I didn't understand this culture, right? This white culture. There's a white sub language that people who grow up around white people, they learn it. And a lot of the people in my dorm, they knew it and I didn't. And so I'm encountering all this like sexism and racism and people saying things about my body. I remember the first time, I don't want to cuss on y'all's show if it's not okay. Is it okay to cuss?
Yeah.
Okay. I remember the first time, I write about this in the book. I remember the first time I was walking down the street at USC and somebody called me a Black bitch because I got in the way of their skateboard. And I fight. So I was like, is this a fight? Like, are we about to fight? Right? Like, what's about to happen? And it was just, and everybody was so nonchalant. Like, that's just what you just do. And I was mortified because there's a different feeling when there's a social acceptance, right, of how people treat us. And luckily, I was living on the floor on campus that was all Black students. It was called Somerville Scholars. And I went up and I told them what happened. And we all sat and we started like sharing these stories of times when people had called us racial slurs, and they all had experiences. This was my first time.
Was it they all had this experience on this campus or throughout their lives?
Throughout their lives. Okay. Throughout their lives. Because they had grown up around white folk. Mm-hmm. And so they were kind of like, hey, this is kind of par for the course. And I started reading more about this. I was like, I'm missing something. I'm missing something. Like, I don't understand. I wanted to take a class. There was no class. I wanted to enroll in a course at least with a Black woman who could teach me. And the one Black woman on campus was socially conservative and not pro-Black. So I was like, this is confusing, right? So I kept trying to find these courses, and I found out later as a professor that the reason why they're not offered is because in the 70s and 80s, when a lot of Black women were pushing for these departments, for women and gender studies departments, LGBTQIA studies departments, AFAM departments, it was seen as this kind of radical change to campuses, and people were very resistant. So while some campuses were willing to make those changes, unfortunately, in recent years, as we've seen the massive conservative push the opposite direction, what a lot of campuses have done is they just simply defund it, right? They just stopped including money in the budget to keep those departments staffed and to keep people paid. So a lot of what was huge gains in the 70s and 80s are retracted now. So when I got to school in 2002, there weren't any courses. There weren't even professors. So I to this day have not taken a Black feminist politics course, not because I haven't wanted to, but even in graduate school at University of Chicago, I still couldn't find one. So I'm teaching the class now that I wanted to take. I'm writing the book because I don't want another young person, a young queer-bodied person, a young girl who's like, how do I locate myself in this world? How do I find these voices to have to go through what I did? Now it's all in one book.
Does that sound familiar to you, Kwyn?
Yeah, there is lots of invisibilizing, I feel, within Black academia, especially like from Black queer voices, and specifically within the Women and Gender Studies department. Even at JMU, feminism is still very whitewashed, and it's very, very cisgendered, and it's still very, very like, oh, like reproductive rights, but we're not going to talk about abortion care. Like,
that's
okay,
right.
Talk about the wage gap, but we're not going to talk about classism. Like, okay, we're going to talk about sexism, or we're going to not talk about sexual assault and misogyny. So it's very like one-laned and not as developed as I would want it to be, where I feel safe, like even attending the class without like being angry at the fact that there's so much missing. And I wanted to talk about, Dr. Jackson, you and I both have experience with understanding like what Black queer feminism is. Like, can you, in this current political space, a lot of Black cis women, we have been going back and forth on the debate of if, Black trans women like are considered women. And within your book, how have you incorporated examples of intersectionality, or how have you uplifted and championed that mandate that like, okay, trans women have to be included in this history of Black feminism?
I love this question. So, I mean, I really appreciate earlier you brought up Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera. First, I would like to say trans women are women. And there's no question about that. But also, Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson show up in my book, specifically in the context of the section where I talk about the erasure of Black women's labor. I had an experience when I worked at Disney. That was my first job out of college. And I was pregnant with my first child, and I contracted E. coli meningitis, and I almost died. I was actually at work when it hit me. The light started hitting my eyes, and I could feel the heat of the light all the way into the back of my skull. And my head got heavy, and my head started throbbing, and I couldn't hold my head up anymore. So I'd like trudged to my car, and I fainted in my car. And my partner, my spouse, who I've been married to now for 20 years, came and got me and took me to the emergency room, where I had to have multiple spinal taps because my brain fluid was leaking into my back, into my body. And when I woke up, I know y'all seen E.T. On E.T. when they're wearing the white suits and it's like, they was doing that to me. I was shocked.
Wow.
um,
You were in some type of isolation that
Yeah.
required all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I went through all that. I almost lost my child. And when I had to feed myself through a tube, I had to learn how to walk again. It took me a month to rehabilitate. And when I got back to work, I walked up to my desk and there was a little white gay man sitting in my chair. And he turned around to me and said, "Oh my gosh, you're back." And he stuck his wrist out and said, "Can you give it to me? I'd like a month off of work too." And I'm sitting there
Wow.
and I was like, okay, don't cry. Because
Right.
remember, again, y'all, I fight, right? So I was like, right. And I looked at him and I said, "I almost died. I almost lost my child." And he said, "I'm just saying, I want time off." And I think about this a lot when we talk about Marsha P. Johnson, and I bring her into this conversation because of the fact that she worked so hard for us. She worked so hard for queer and trans people. Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivetta were responsible for creating the Street Transvestite Activist Organization, the revolutionaries who opened homes for trans and queer folks who were on the streets because their families had put them out and they had nowhere to live. She is one of the people who's responsible for our conception today of house mothers, because there were so many young queer people who were sleeping out on park benches in New York City that they had to start adopting one another and creating these extended kinfolk networks so that people would have alternative mothers and fathers to care for them. And then when Marsha P. Johnson was killed, the police didn't even care enough to figure out the conditions of her death. It still to this day remains a mystery. It took 30 years or so, I believe, to even get her name in the New York Times obituary section.
Wow.
Right.
So, I say all this to say that like transphobia is really, really violent. It's so violent that it erases the history and the lives of Black women, queer women, brown women who have been working so hard to ensure that we all have a little bit more justice. And this fear of what people think of as transness, this boogeyman in their mind, has become so violent that it has created a scenario where young people are afraid that they're not going to make it past 35 years old. And that to me is just such a tragedy. It's such a tragedy. So I will say the book absolutely deals with that, because no matter how I look to people, I'm a person of trans experience. I am a gender fluid person. I'm an androgynous person. I do not feel gender. So most people walk around feeling, like a man or a woman. I don't. And I didn't as a child. There were days where I asked my mother, "Am I a boy? I don't understand how gender works." And she didn't have the tools to help me understand that, but Black women taught me. Right. And so this book is about my journey trying to also figure that out too, right? Because you don't have to be trans to understand self-discovery, right? You don't have to be queer to understand being lost in your body and trying to figure out where you need to land. So this book is an effort for me to locate myself. I wrote most of it during COVID when I was watching the women who raised me pass away. My auntie Barbara, who taught me about the chicken, she passed away during COVID. My grandmother, who was probably more significant in raising me than my father, passed away during COVID. I lost about 12 people who were very close to me, and most of them were Black women during COVID. And none of them were trans, and none of them were queer. So I really want people to pick this book up and understand that it doesn't really matter how folks exist in their bodies, how they identify with their relationship ethics and their sexual politics. If we understand that loving Black people is a universal phenomenon that we all should participate in equally, that's what this book is about.
This is a great addition to Black History Month discussions. It really is. I think you started us off on something. Dr. Jen Jackson, and talking about the book, Black Women Taught Us. An Intimate History of Black Feminism. How can people get the book?
You can find the book anywhere online. It looks like this. It's beautiful. I love the cover. But you can also find the book online at jenmjackson.com/books. And I'm on my book tour, so I'm probably coming to a city near you. I'm coming to Chicago in 2 weeks.
All right. Okay. All right. Kwyn will get you some Garrett's popcorn and anything that is not resembling Papa Do's.
Exactly.
And how can we follow you on Instagram or other social media?
You can find me everywhere online at Jen M. Jackson, PhD. 2 N's, JENNM Jackson, PhD. I'm all over the internet.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. Good luck with your book. And
thank you for having me.
And a wonderful discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was nice. Very informative.
So you couldn't remember that they were a soror, huh? Okay. Right.
No, it's not that I didn't remember. I wanted to.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I was like,
No worries. Let's move to trending topics. And Myra J., you were just in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, actually suburban Dallas area. Where are you headed now for your comedy touring?
Oh, let me be with the famous Mr. Brown at the Perfect Note on February 7th.
That's a week from tonight.
Well, yes, it is. So yes, I will be doing the show probably from my car next next Wednesday night in the almighty parking lot. Yes.
There you go. Oh, Perfect Note. Okay. And they can follow you and get information about where this club is and all of that jazz, right?
Yeah, Perfect Note in Marietta on Windy Hill. Yeah.
All right. Stephen Hill, where's the Songbird headed? You are muted.
Unmute yourself, Mr. Hill.
Blue Note in Napa Valley this weekend, Friday and Saturday is where she'll be. Equally as important, by the way, is that there'll be looping live from Luca's Lair on my IG Live tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Western Time. The lovely, the wonderful and talented Luca, my nephew, and I will be playing some music from now and from 50 years ago, as we are wont to do on my IG Live. At Stephen Grant Hill is my IG. Come check us out at 9 p.m. It's going to be a show.
That's going to be a show, for sure. And young Kwyn, what about you? I know you've got a busy month coming up.
Yeah, I just have a few private shows.
All right, Blair.
On the 1st. And then next week I'll be in Kansas City for the Association of Writers and Poets Conference. And then a performance on March 1st. But please stay connected with me on all the things as well at Kwynology.
All right, then. Looking at some of the things that are going on in our world, there are concerns about the harmful effects of social media use on America's youth, and it reached a crescendo, and it has, they say over the last year or so, but it has been at least that long. A public health advisory from the Surgeon General last year noted social media use presents a profound risk of harm for kids and teens' mental health and called for immediate action from the tech companies, those that have these social media platforms. Lawmakers used a hearing today to push for a package of bills meant to help stop the exploitation of kids online, including the Stop CSAM Act, which would allow victims of child exploitation to sue tech platforms. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg and other tech leaders, including formerly known as Twitter, X, CEO Linda Yaccarino, who just got her job, TikTok CEO Xu Zichu, Snap CEO Evan Spiegel, and Discord CEO Jason Citron argued that they have stepped up with protective measures that insulate children and teens on their platforms. But the critics, namely the senators today, really disagreed. This was Zuckerberg's 8th time testifying before Congress. It was the first for Yaccarino, Spiegel, and Citron, who were subpoenaed to appear. And our Illinois Senator Dick Durbin, who is the chairman of the committee, said these people only accepted services of this subpoena after U.S. Marshals were sent to Discord's headquarters at taxpayer expense.
I think Mark. So Mark showed up on his own, and then they had to subpoena the rest of them.
Right. And like they're acting like congressmen now. I don't know. They said they were open to working with lawmakers to address their concerns. And Zuckerberg turned down requests to expand child safety and to have a team working on this. And they released internal documents from Meta that show Zuckerberg rejected 2021 requests to add dozens of employees to focus on children's well-being and safety. They are concerned about children that are susceptible to advertising and to other suggestions of bullying and things such as this that are leading to child suicides. Sometimes murder has been charged against kids that have coerced children to do dangerous things, and as well as accepting the advertising of these companies that don't mean any good for the children. And one of the things I was talking about with Alicia Cooper the other day was the rise of young girls, preteen girls, in stores like Sephora over the Christmas holidays because of all of the advertising on social media. And they're trying to figure out where did all these kids come from? And they were sampling and buying makeup in the stores, not for their moms, not for their older sisters. They were trying it on for themselves. And because of the advertising on social media. And so they're trying to stop all of this. And the leaders of these social media companies are not, they're not facing up to it. Mark Zuckerberg did address the families attending the hearing only after Senator Josh Hawley, a Republican from Missouri, urged Zuckerberg to apologize directly to the families of victims and suggested the billionaire establish a victim compensation fund. He did address the families, but would not commit to the fund idea during the hearing.
Look, so remember, you got to remember, in 1996, when all these people were operating out of garages, Congress was like, okay, we are not going to hold you accountable for what might be on your sites because we know you can't police the whole thing. That was 96. That law is still in now that they're all big corporations, the $1 trillion corporations. So they had the opportunity to police themselves. They just didn't, right? Because it's not, you have a choice of hiring 40 people to police for harmful activity. It doesn't do, it has a negative effect on your revenue growth. That's one thing. So Congress is now there's going to be legislation that absolutely attaches themselves to tech and makes tech people responsible and opens them up for lawsuits. The 1996 prevented lawsuits. It's about to go into lawsuits.
It's over. Yeah.
That said, I watched some of it today, and this is where it gets dicey because I still believe parents have some responsibility.
Oh, absolutely.
Parents have responsibility. They seem to want to throw off to always there's got to be somebody else besides them that's causing the problem. Whenever somebody's being bullied or they're watching too much online, there are ways. Look, I know this because I have family members who you can keep your kid offline. You can keep them off of a phone. They're going to see it at school. I get it, but there's certain ways to cut down on it. I think I'm all for legislation, but I also think it also feels like parents. And I say this from experience because Jaden and I have gotten to
major discussions, yes, and he's frozen now.
I hope
I'm going to know what you're looking at. I'm only going to talk to you about it if your health. No. If your health or safety are involved, I'll jump in. Otherwise, you can do whatever crazy stuff you want to do. But as a parent, you jump on board. You don't. Well, maybe he's being bullied. I don't know. I gave him his phone, but I don't look at it anymore. That's craziness to me. Craziness.
Well, bottom line, once again, follow the money. Follow the money. As Stephen said, these started off as little mom pop operations,
working out of their garage.
Right. They are billionaires now. And you mean to tell me that you can't hire thousands of people? You ever try to call Facebook? Look it up. This is a media company. You can't get nobody on the phone and say, "Oh, look, I lost my password." You cannot find anybody. Why
by design.
Is that? Exactly, because they don't want you to. And on that same note, yes, as parents, as adults, we have to be responsible for our children. Even doctors are talking about teens and young people in their 20s are coming in now with their necks they are finding now that their necks are already starting to curve from looking down all the time on their phones and on their laptops and on their iPads and being on social media. They are developing a permanent curve in their necks already. So yes, it's twofold. Everybody needs to step up.
And there are ridiculous laws. We talked about this on the other day as well, where the state legislature of Florida has a bill that they expect to get passed, where children uh, will not have social media access and maybe not even have phones before the age of 16.
Mm-hmm.
Their plan, that's the bill. They want to keep them off of phones and off of social media until 16, which is highly unrealistic. But this is not. But they're not putting the onus on the parents. They're making it a state law.
Look, I think there's some 12-year-olds in certain households that need to let their parents know they're home from school when both parents are working. Like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It starts at 16. That just doesn't make sense. That you limit phones
but at 8, I had to call my mom when I came home, from school.
There's something called a landline. Okay, call me old school, but there is a land. Yes, I was a latchkey kid, and I had to let somebody know when I came in, and I didn't have a cell phone.
Right. Yeah.
I'm just
Kwyn, all the things you have to look forward to. A couple of names in the obituary column: Hinton Battle, the 3-time Tony Award-winning singer, dancer, choreographer, producer, and director, who landed the role of the Scarecrow in the original production of The Wiz on Broadway, died January 29th. No reason was given for his death, but it was confirmed by his friend Debbie Allen on social media. He was 67 years old. He was born to a military family in Germany and raised in Washington, D.C. and New York. So check this out. He was just 15 when he made his Broadway debut in The Wiz, having landed the role of the Scarecrow quite unexpectedly. He said while the show was a promotional tour before it actually hit Broadway, one of the leads left abruptly during intermission. And he was called out of the chorus and cast as the Scarecrow for the second act. He said, I had no idea what to do, but I knew I could dance. And he said, so Stephanie Mills, who was playing Dorothy, said to him, when I pull your straw, that's when you have a line. So every time she would pull his straw, he would jump in the air, do a split, do a pirouette turn, and say whatever came out of his mouth. And because it was a Scarecrow, it was funny. And he had no brain. And the next day he was offered the role full time. 15 years old.
I love it.
That's a great story. That's a great story. She said, today I honor Hinton Battle, my dear friend who left us to dance and sing in God's ensemble. He fought his battle to live and be creative, impacting audiences and young people across the globe. Let us forever speak his name. And yes, Hinton Battle will forever go down in Broadway history for his incredible work and the things that he has done. But that beginning as the Scarecrow in Broadway, that's quite a story. Absolutely. And speaking of Broadway icons, Chita Rivera has died. She was 91 years old, the fire and ice dancer, singer, and actress who soared into stardom in the original Broadway production of West Side Story and captivated audiences for nearly 7 decades, died Tuesday. She played the role of Anita in West Side Story, also starred in Bye Bye Birdie and Chicago. And Chita was my first cousin's grandmother worked for Chita. And so I grew up knowing her, and when she would come to town and we'd go see her shows and stuff. And the last time I saw her was on Broadway. She was the first Latina and first Latin American to receive a Kennedy Center honor in 2002, as well as the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Obama in 2009. And she won the Tony Award. Having won Tony Awards already, she won the Tony Award for Lifetime Achievement in 2018. She was a spitfire, and she passed away in her sleep, according to her daughter Lisa, and after a brief illness. So I wish her Godspeed as well, and may her memory be a blessing. We don't have time to talk about this, Stephen Hill, but we have got to. Next week, Joe Cobb has not been paid for his voice of Soul Train announcer, and he wants $70-something thousand because they stopped paying him when all of the rights for Soul Train were sold to a conglomerate of people. And he said he did not sign off on this, and so he's like, where my money? And without it, we should not be able to hear Soul Train. Joe Cobb was a DJ in Chicago, friends with the great Don Cornelius, and they were just messing around one day, and he came up with that, and it became the voice of Soul Train.
Yep. And somewhere there's a piece of paper that explains exactly what he's due for that piece of art. And everyone will hold to whatever that piece of paper says, unless, of course, they were just fooling around. He came up with it and they didn't bother to pay.
But they did pay him initially. I mean, he was paid until like maybe 8 to 10 years ago.
I understand that. Sometimes people get paid without there being any paper attached to it.
Okay.
Some people, sometimes just to be the good person, you get paid, and then the good person either goes away or it changes, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, what do you have on paper? That's what I'm going to be beholden to. Ladies and gentlemen, that's why I call it show business.
The business of show.
Show business.
And speaking of show business, let's move to entertainment. And Yolanda, you have something for us?
What? Okay, so
what the world? I thought that was buried away somewhere.
So first of all, I have to get you a better copy of that than that.
Okay.
Number two, you left the part where Sybil sings Jermaine Jackson like she's Mick Jagger. You left that part. You left it. Oh, I'll be there to comfort you, baby. But I will say, since you brought it up, it contained one of the most mind-blowing moments of my life. So if you know the song, it's like, I'll be there, and then Jermaine goes, I'll be there to comfort you, holding on. And I went over because the Jacksons are over in the corner.
They were judging us, Kwyn.
The Jacksons were actually there judging.
This was on the cruise?
On the cruise.
Yes, right. On the cruise. Marlon, Jackie, and Tito are actually there judging us. And so when Sybil, as Jermaine goes, I'll be your strength, I'll keep holding on, I ran over and went, holding on, hit Marlon. Marlon went, holding on, and Jackie went, holding on.
It went on.
I lost my mind. I lost my mind. You left that part out.
It was a beautiful thing.
It's one of the most amazing moments of my life.
Another amazing moment of your life may have occurred this week at the Hollywood Walk of Fame ceremonies. Happy birthday to Uncle Charlie, celebrating his 71st birthday and getting his star on the Walk of Fame. Gave an emotional and incredible testimony, Stephen Hill, talking about the star, where his star was placed, were the streets where he once lived, on the streets as he was battling drug abuse.
50 steps away from where that star is. He went on to tell us a letter story. We all went to lunch afterwards. There was a lunch for him, and he was like, he would sleep there and then get up in the morning, and people would say like, "Hey, Charlie Wilson from the Gap Band, what's going on?" He'd tell people like, "Yeah, I'm just getting home from the studio. I got to go get washed up." But the biggest thrill, one of the biggest thrills, is to watch that.
What a circle of events that must have been. Yeah. And so congratulations to Charlie Wilson, one of the dearest, and to his wife as well. Just an amazing Maheen, yes. So that is entertainment, and thank you for that little piece of history from the Tom Jordan cruise. Yes.
I can't believe you left the Sybil part out, because Sybil was killing it.
Well, she has a clock that she. When you're producing the show, it'll be different. I know. Let us move to the jewel. Being intentional is when your desires match your thoughts and actions. Being intentional is when your desires match your thoughts and action. So inhale intention. and exhale procrastination. Let's get started on matching these things, shall we? Thank you all so much.
I'll do it
Thank you,
tomorrow.
Dr. Jen Jackson. Appreciate it. Great job, Kwyn and Stephen Hill and Myra J. We'll see you all soon. Aloha.